Hola amigos, bienvenidos a su programa 18 minutos, donde tocamos temas de innovación, liderazgo, economía, management, entre otros. Hoy nos acompaña un gran invitado. Él es Uri Levine, nada más y menos que el cofundador de Waze. Yo soy Francisco Rodríguez Aguirre, presidente de Smart Speakers, el buró líder de conferencistas en Latinoamérica, y me acompaña mi gran amigo Mauricio Reynoso.
Buenos días, Paco, ¿cómo están todos? Qué gusto saludarlos. Y efectivamente hoy en este programa 18 minutos, donde uno de los temas clave es innovación, pues qué mejor que platicar esta mañana con Uri Levine.
Sí,
es una gran oportunidad para todos.
Uno de los grandes emprendedores que ha tenido la humanidad al crear una solución como lo es Waze, que a todos nos ayuda todos los días. Bueno, pues voy a empezar a hacer las preguntas en inglés para que podamos comunicarnos. Vamos a tener traducción simultánea. Uri, thank you very much for being with us. It's a pleasure to have such a great entrepreneur like you. So, how did you start Waze, Uri?
So thank you, and you know, in all of my startups, I started from a personal perspective and usually personal frustration. So I get into something that I really don't like, and I ask myself, can I change that? Right? And I hate traffic jams. I really hate traffic jams, and it was back in 2006 when we were in a family vacation up in the northern part of Israel. And when it was time to go home, we were like 10 different cars, and everyone left before we did. And I started to call them up and ask them, how is traffic like in your route? And they told me, right? And I realized that really what I need is someone ahead of me on the road to tell me what's going on. So that was in 2006, but we didn't start Waze until 2007 when I met the other founders, the other co-founders of Waze, Amir and Ehud, that they have realized a way to crowdsource the map. So I was thinking of crowdsourcing the traffic, they were thinking of crowdsourcing the map. And together, back in 2007, we decided that, wait a minute, if we do that together, we can actually build Waze. We can build ways that drivers can outsmart the traffic and avoid traffic jams. And that was the beginning of Waze.
That's fantastic, Uri. And I really wonder, because you started in the US, and of course you were familiar with that market, etc. But thinking abroad US, how did you grow internationally? How was the trigger for your idea to go abroad US serving via Waze?
So look, Israel is a very small place, right? And so all the startups that start in Israel, they're starting to think about becoming a global company on the first day, right? And the reality is that there are a lot of markets besides the US, right? Latin America is 4 ways. It's about equal in size as the US. And Western Europe is about equal in size, if not even bigger than the US. And you think about it and you realize that there are a lot of places that the problem is very painful, right? And for a second, I would say, if you take an American, even from LA, and they will tell you, oh, you have no idea, our traffic jams are the most severe traffic jams they are. Trust me, Mexico City is worse, right? And Sao Paulo is worse, and Jakarta is worse, and Mumbai is worse, and many other places suffer from traffic jams the same way that Americans do. And so when we started, we said, okay, we have one country that is the major country is the US, but at the same time, we put equal efforts in Latin America, in Europe, in Asia, and we try to become global from really the first day.
Great, Uri. What were the first problems that you have when you started Waze, and how did you overcome them?
Look, you have to understand, right? Building a startup is a journey of failures, right? So you really try to do something that no one did before. And you try something and it doesn't work, right? And so you try another thing and it doesn't work. And you keep on trying different things until you find one thing that does work. And so once you realize that, every time that you have a thesis and it doesn't work, it's a crisis, right? And you need to reinvent yourself again and again and again. Now, it's a journey of failures trying to figure out product market fit, and then it's another journey of failures trying to figure out growth, and then it's another journey of failures trying to figure out the business model. And each one of them, every day is the first day of the rest of your life, but it's also could be the last day of the rest of your life, because if you are unable to overcome that challenge, then you will die, right? That's the life of a startup. If you are unable to figure out product market fit, you will die. If you were able to figure out product market fit and you're unable to figure out a business model, you will die. If you were able to figure out a business model, but you are unable to figure out growth, you will die. And so each one of them is important at its own timing, and it's critical to pass. And the reality is that if you ask me what is the biggest challenge, the next one is always the biggest challenge.
Of course, yeah. And Uri, in benefit for others entrepreneurs that are working these days in their projects, I would like for you to tell us and share with us which are the what work well when looking in the face of potential investors. What work well and what do you do different, just as an advice for early entrepreneurs that are working in early stages of their projects today?
So look, funding is, if you realize that building a startup is a roller coaster journey with ups and downs, raising capital is like roller coaster in the dark. You don't even know what's coming, right? Now, the reality is that if you build a product and you have a value proposition that you offer to customers, and you go to 100 customers, somewhere between 20 to 50 are going to say yes. If you go with your pitch deck to investors and you go and speak with 100 investors, maybe one will say yes, right? So the ratio of yes is dramatically lower. And the first thing that you need to realize that this is it, right? This is it. You simply need to try more until you find the one that is successful. But when I spoke with other investors and I asked them, why did you decide to invest in this startup or this startup? I heard, and this is the early stage, right? So seed or pre-seed round, I heard only two answers. I like the CEO, I like the story. That's it. I like the CEO, I like the story. Now, if this is the case, then the CEO needs to be able to tell a good story, because otherwise it's not going to work. But also the CEO needs to go by herself to tell the story, because they need the entire stage to be liked. Now, the other part that is critical for entrepreneurs that are trying to raise capital for the first time is the fact that investors are going to make their decisions in a very, very short time. I asked an investor once, how long does it take them to decide if they like the entrepreneur or not? And they told me before they sit down. That's how fast, right? And so you only have few minutes to make a few seconds to establish the first impression, and then few minutes later to either let that first impression sink or change that, right? And that's it. And so you have to start with the strongest point at the beginning, because maybe by the time you'll get there, it's irrelevant anymore. They already made a decision. So this is something that we need to remember, is that there are two factors here, right? Telling a good story and starting with the strongest point at the beginning.
Thank you, Uri. What are the two most important considerations for innovation in business?
So, if you look at all the huge companies of the world today, right? From Amazon to Apple to Microsoft to Facebook to Google to whomever, right? And you realize that they're only a few decades old, right? So some of them are not even 20 years old. Some of them are just 20-something years old, right? They were startups 20 years ago, right? Or even less than that. They were startups exactly like the new startup that is starting tomorrow morning. Right? And in many cases, what we will see is that the innovation and disruption are coming from newcomers. Now, in many cases, once they become big enough, they don't see innovation, or they're unable to create innovation or disruption themselves, and they will be disrupted over the years, right? Just imagine that when iPhone started back in 2007, Microsoft was in a position to become the market leader of the smartphones, right? They had the Windows mobile operating system that was running on Nokia and Samsung and Motorola and nearly all the devices. And when they looked at the iPhone, they say, this is cute, but it will never take off, right? And the reality is that it did. And so in many cases, innovation is about newcomers. So someone that have nothing to lose is in a position to create new innovation or new disruption in the market. And the other part of it is the realization that the opportunity is much bigger than the threat, even for existing businesses, right? Just take Uber, for example, right? And you ask yourself, so how many on-demand trips there are today? And there are more than 10 times on-demand trips today than there were before Uber started, right? So 10, 15 years ago. And in this 10 times bigger market, there is room for Uber, there is room for Lyft, there is room for 99 taxi, there is room for BlaBlaCar, and there's actually 3-4 times bigger room for taxi drivers. The opportunity is bigger than the threat. And once you accept that and you realize that this is the case, maybe then you would like to embrace innovation and disruption.
Great. Uri, once I had the opportunity to hear from Steve Jobs the importance of surrounding of the best talent available and how to attract and develop them for you to be successful as a leader, entrepreneur, etc. What would you say are the key factors for you to be successful as a leader following this idea from Steve Jobs? What was how the talent made the difference for Waze and the success you have in the organization?
So let me start by saying that I'm finalizing my book these days. It's called Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution. And this is about a handbook for entrepreneurs, how to become more successful as an entrepreneur. And one of the most dramatic chapters there called Firing and Hiring. And when I wrote that at the beginning, people told me, no, it should be hiring and firing. And I insisted because hiring is easy, firing is hard. And the reality is that in many organizations, we'll hire people and it will take them so much time to realize or not to realize, to take an action in the case that they don't fit the organization. And the most important thing to remember here is that within a month, you would know, everyone knows. And if you'll tell me, no, it's not going to take a month, it's going to take 2 or 3 months, then I would say, okay, whatever period of time you say that you need to realize if this person is the right choice or not. At the end of this period, you need to ask yourself very simple questions, and only one question. Knowing what I know today, would I hire this guy? And if the answer is no, then fire them. Fire them immediately, because the more that they stay, they actually create more damage. At Waze, we hired the management team at the very, very early days. Most of them were people that we know from other places, right? And so we were working with the underlying assumption that if I've worked with this guy before, then I already know his capabilities, and the likelihood of making an error in the hiring is less. And we actually had the entire management team from the end of the first year remain in place until we sold the company to Google. But still, the most important part is making the hard decisions, firing if this person does not fit.
Great, Uri. Uri, I know that you give conferences. What is the most interesting question that you have been asked in a keynote conference?
I don't think that I heard that yet. It's probably in the next one.
Well, any good question that they have, but
there were
are
a
really
lot of
interesting, not just good, and interesting questions.
A challenging question.
A challenging
maybe.
question.
There were like many challenging questions. One of them that I remember was about, so I made a fortune at the acquisition of Waze, and the day after I found myself started a new startup, right? And why didn't I retire in Cancun or in Playa del Carmen and enjoy my life, right? And I said,
such a nice places.
Yeah. And I said, I like to create value. That's my destiny. That's my mission in life, is to create more and more and more value. And this is why I'm building more and more and more startups. And this is why I'm writing my book, so I can help other entrepreneurs to create value and feel like I'm, paying my dues or increasing the likelihood of entrepreneurs to change the world and make it a better place.
Well, we really appreciate your participation these days. Personally, I have to say this. Thank you, Uri. Waze is has been my savior in the complex city, Mexico City's traffic. So I really appreciate that you had this idea, and thank you for that on behalf of every citizen in the world. So muchas gracias. Gracias, Paco. Estamos cerrando nuestro programa.
Gracias, Mauricio. Gracias a todo nuestro público de la A Medir, de Smart Speakers, a todo el público de Mundo Ejecutivo. Y pues nos vemos en nuestro próximo programa de 18 minutos. Uri, thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Uri.
Mundo Ejecutivo presentó